Today, we're talking about in-laws, all the complexity, all the tension, all the stuff nobody prepares you for going into marriage. And specifically, we're going to talk about two things that are deeply connected. The grief we carry when our in-laws don't meet the expectations we never actually set out loud, and the boundary most couples never learn to set. The one around how we talk about our in-laws to our partner. If you've ever hung up the phone with your mother-in-law and felt this weird, unnamed sadness you couldn't explain, or if you've ever caught yourself building a whole case against your spouse's parents in your head before you've even said a word out loud, this one's for you. So go grab a warm drink and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Russler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. Here's the thing about in-law relationships. We walk into marriage assuming we know what family's supposed to feel like because we grew up with a version of it. Maybe your mom called you every Sunday, maybe your dad showed up to every soccer game, and somewhere in the back of your mind, without ever saying it out loud, you thought, my in-laws will probably be something like that too. Or, and this one's just as common, my in-laws will be the family I never had. I've sat across from so many clients over the years who describe this ache, and when we dig into it, it's rarely about one bad conversation or one holiday gone wrong. It's about a quiet, ongoing disappointment, a hope that got attached to people who never agreed to carry it. And I'll tell you, this shows up differently depending on where you come from, too. I work with a lot of couples living abroad, couples blending two different cultures. And honestly, what a good mother-in-law does in one culture can be very different in another culture. So some of this ache isn't about a specific person disappointing you. It's two completely different definitions of family colliding. And nobody sat down to compare notes first. So let's actually name what's happening, okay? Because, once we name it, we can do something about it. The first thing I want you to hear today is this. What you're feeling about your in-laws might not be anger, it might be grief. Grief shows up anytime we lose something. And that includes the loss of something we imagine but never had. You pictured a mother-in-law who'd call just to check in, a father-in-law who'd ask about your work, your kids, your life, and remember what you said the last time you spoke. And instead, maybe you got polite distance. Maybe you got someone who forgets your birthday, who never quite includes you the way you hoped, who makes you feel like you're still auditioning for the family 15 years in. Here's what I want to gently point out, though. Those were expectations, not agreements. Nobody sat down and promised you that relationship. You built it in your head, usually based on what you grew up with, or just as often based on what you didn't get growing up, and hoped you'd finally get through your marriage. And I hear you. Maybe they give their son or daughter that, but they're not giving it to you. So of course you assumed you would receive it as well, but you're not getting it. Either way, your in-laws never signed up for the job you assigned them. That doesn't make the grief less real. It's still a loss. You're allowed to feel sad about it. But when we can separate this hurts from they're doing something wrong to me, we get our power back. Because you can't fix a broken agreement that was never actually made. What you can do is grieve the fantasy and then decide clearly with open eyes what kind of relationship is actually possible with the real people in front of you. Some of us have had to do this with our actual parents, so you know what I'm talking about. I think of a client I worked with who spent years hurt that her mother-in-law never asked her about her career, never once said, I'm proud of you, always just focused on what she needed to be doing in the home and the family and saying, gosh, it's a shame that you don't have more time for your kids. Her own mother had died when she was younger, and somewhere along the way, she quietly hoped her husband's mother would step into that space. When we finally named that out loud, that she wasn't grieving rudeness, she was grieving a mother, everything shifted. She stopped waiting for her mother-in-law to become someone else, and she started grieving what she'd actually lost. That's a very different and much more honest place to stand. I've seen the same thing on the other side too with men. I worked with a husband who couldn't understand why he felt so flat every time he was around his wife's father. His own dad had been distant, kind of checked out, and he'd quietly hoped his father-in-law, who was warm and involved with everyone else, would fill some of the gap for him. When his father-in-law didn't reach for that same closeness with him, my client just felt like a disappointment, like he was doing something wrong. It took some work to help him see this was never about him failing to earn something. It was an old wound looking for a new person to heal it, and that's simply not a fair job to hand to anyone, even someone kind. So ask yourself, what did I hope this person, this in-law, would give me that maybe no one ever explicitly promised? Was I hoping they'd replace something I didn't get from my own family or complete something my own family started? I know for me, I've had to reconcile the fact that my in-laws and what my parents would do are very different when it comes to helping with the kids and being involved in our family. There are cultural differences there, and there's personality differences there. But for a long time, I really held resentment towards that. Once you can answer those questions, you can stop being in conflict with reality, and you can start grieving the actual loss instead of staying angry at a person who was never in on the deal. Okay, here's the second piece, and this one is just as important: how we talk to our partner about our in-laws. Ooh, let's all take a deep breath. Okay, here's a dynamic I see constantly. One partner is hurt by something their in-laws said or did, or didn't do, and they go straight to their spouse to vent, which on the surface sounds healthy, right? We're told, communicate, don't bottle it up. And yes, you absolutely should be able to say, hey, this really bothered me and I don't know how to handle it. That's fair. That's actually really necessary. But there's a difference between bringing something up once and then building a running case. When you constantly vent, complain, and stack up evidence against your partner's parents, you're quietly asking them to choose a side against their own mother or father. And think about what you're actually asking. You're asking them to be angry at the people who raised them, the same people they probably still love in some complicated, tangled up way, on your behalf. That's an enormous ask, and most of us never even realize we're making it. I think about this through the lens of a pattern I teach a lot, the drama triangle. When you vent repeatedly without any boundary around it, you can accidentally cast your partner as the villain in their own family story, and yourself as the victim who needs rescuing. And your partner, if they love you, will often step into hero mode, defending you, getting angry at their own parents, or cutting off contact, even when part of them doesn't actually want to go that far. For some of you, your partner won't do that. They'll ignore you, they'll discount what you're sharing, because they want to avoid conflict. And you become the villain, and they become the victim. None of that's connection, and it usually leaves everyone a little resentful, including you. So here's the flip side, though, because I want to be fair to both directions of this. Just as often, I see the opposite problem. The partner whose family is the source of the hurt says nothing at all. Like I said, conflict avoided. And I mean specifically to their own parents. They'll vent to their spouse plenty, but they won't say a word to mom or dad. Why? To keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to not hurt anyone's feelings. But your feelings are allowed to get hurt, right? And that's the piece that is frustrating. Because at the end of the day, if you're that person who's avoiding the conflict with your parents, it's easier to let your partner absorb it than to have one uncomfortable conversation with your own parents. Let's be honest. But when you got married, you chose your partner, not your parents. This doesn't mean you abandon your family of origin. It means your partner's well-being inside your family system now matters as much as or more than keeping everyone comfortable. If your mom is cold to your spouse or your dad makes a joke that really isn't a joke, it's your job, not your partner's, to address that. Your partner can tell you it hurts. You are the one to have the hard conversation with your parent. This is where so many of us default to avoidance. We just don't say anything. We hope it blows over. And meanwhile, our partner's quietly absorbing years of small hurts because we didn't want to rock the boat with our own family. That's not keeping the peace, is it? That's outsourcing your discomfort onto the person you promised to protect. So do you see this as two-sided? One, if we go and complain to our partner, it needs to be very clear, hey, this thing bothered me and I'd like it to be addressed. Not, and now I have all these emotions, all this resentment, and I have all these years of baggage and you're not doing anything, right? That's putting your partner in a weird place. And then as the partner who's receiving that feedback, you absolutely can have difficult conversations with your parents. Yes, they may not like it. Yes, they might throw an adult tantrum. However, you did choose your partner, and it's not fair to them that they have to absorb the discomfort just because you're struggling to have those difficult conversations. So, what do we actually do about this? Okay, let me give you some tools. So, now that we've named the grief and named the boundary problem, let's talk about what actually addressing this looks like, because naming a problem without a path forward just leaves you feeling stuck. First, when you do need to say something to your own parent, you don't need a speech. You need one clear, kind sentence, something like, Mom, when you left my partner out of the conversation at dinner, it really bothered me, and I want us to be more intentional about that going forward. Notice what that sentence does. It names the specific behavior, it names the impact, and it makes a simple ask. It doesn't relegate every holiday since 2015, though you probably could. Short, clear statements are always easier for the other person to actually hear and respond to than a big emotional download. Now, again, even with that short, simple statement, your mom might have her own tantrum about it. Because no one wants to be called out for hurting someone else, especially if they never had intentions to. And also, it's going to be uncomfortable for your mom or whatever parent you call out to realize you're putting someone else first before them. So we got to give them some grace there, but it's not okay for them to have the full-on tantrum at us. We can say, hey, when you're ready to talk, I'm here, but I'm not going to sit through this. Second, go in as a team with your partner, not as opponents. Before you have that conversation with your parent, talk to your partner first. I don't want you building a case together, right? I just want you aligning. Ask them, what do you actually need from me here? Do you need me to say something, or do you just need me to know it bothered you? Sometimes your partner isn't even asking you to confront anyone. Sometimes they just want to feel seen. Don't assume action is required before you've asked. And yes, sometimes they want to say, I agree, that was wrong. And I think often as partners, we're not always paying attention to everything that's happening. So we may not have even seen it to be able to say, yeah, that's a problem. And I find for those of you who are very fact-based and we'd like to see the evidence in front of us, it's hard for us to go, yeah, that sucks. I'm so sorry he did that or she said that, if we didn't actually experience it ourselves. But what you're speaking to is the reality of your partner, not the reality of whatever the facts are in front of you. The reality of your partner is they feel unseen, disrespected, hurt, whatever it may be. So in that way, you can be like, I am so sorry that happened. Would you like me to address it with them? Or do you want me to just support you? What can I do to help? You don't have to get defensive. You don't have to get reactive. You don't have to, again, build a case against them. You just want to know how you can support your partner. And third, let's hold a realistic expectation about the outcome. Your parents might not change overnight. More than likely, they're not going to change much at all. They might, probably will get defensive the first time you bring it up. That doesn't mean the conversation went wrong. Repair with your family of origin, just like repair in your marriage, is rarely a single conversation. It's a pattern you build over time, one honest sentence at a time. So let's make this even more usable with some practical steps. Here's 3 things you can start doing this week. Number 1, the next time you feel that ache around your in-laws, pause and ask yourself, is this hurt or is this grief for something that was never promised to me? Just naming it internally changes how you show up in the conversation that follows. Be really honest with yourself. Are there expectations that are there that were never going to be met by your in-laws? Okay, then grieve that so that you can stop getting hurt by the void that they're not filling for you. Number 2, I want you to create a shared phrase for venting versus problem solving. This is great for all areas of life, but especially with your in-laws. Something like, I need to vent, I don't need you to fix it, versus I need your help figuring out what to do, right? Very clear. Problem solving versus venting. That one sentence tells your partner exactly what role you need them in, instead of accidentally recruiting them into a fight with their own family. Okay, number 3, if something needs to be addressed with your in-laws, make a plan for who addresses it and write out your one clear sentence beforehand. And why I say who addresses it, because some of you are at a point where you're ready to start to have the conversations with your in-laws versus go through your partner. In almost every case, the biological child is the one who has the conversation with their own parent, not the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law. But again, you might be in that place where you're like, no, actually, I'm ready to have this conversation and I just want you to support me and empower me to have it. Remember, if it's you who needs to have the conversation with your mom or dad, it's about making sure you don't have your partner carry this conflict anymore. This is yours to handle. So your in-law grief is valid, even when it's grief for something that was never actually promised to you. And protecting your partner inside your own family isn't disloyalty. It's exactly what you signed up for when you said, I do. And you know what? We can hold some boundaries around how much we vent to our partner about their parents and just make sure we're really clear on what hurt us and what we'd like to see different or what we need from them in those moments. If you are nodding along to this episode and you're like, oh my God, Katie, I feel like you're like looking into my life right now. Hey, let's get together and have a relationship game plan call. It's a free 45 minutes where I talk with you and your partner about things like this that keep you stuck in arguing and frustration and resentment. So you can start to build the relationship that you know that you're meant for. You can schedule a time in the link in the show notes. Okay, everybody, I'll see you next time. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.